As with most things in politics, I tend to not pay attention, but when it's stupid things my country does, it kind of breaks some thresholds, like usually whenever Prime Minister Justin Trudeau does or says anything. In our Westminster parliamentary system, thank you Great Britain, the majority of elected caucus calls the shots. The PM appoints ministers to a cabinet, the Minister of Finance, the Environment, etc. One such position was the Minister of Justice and Attorney General of Canada. Now this is different from Great Britain's ministers who have one of each, one Attorney General and one Minister of Justice. Yeah, Canadians are rebellious. Ooh. Anyway, when you appoint an Attorney General, they have a different set of rules to do their job, regardless of their political affiliation. This is referred to as the law. They're concerned with policy and its relationship to the justice system, which means they're not concerned with their political party affiliation and its agenda. They're working by a different set of rules. Much like the AG in America, that person's boss is Lady Justice, regardless of whatever the president or his office says. The law is the law.
Mr. I am the law.
Sometime late last year, the PM office was contacting our then Attorney General, Jody Wilson-Raybould, to grant a deferred prosecution agreement, or a DPA, to a large engineering firm in Quebec called SNC-Lavalin. What this means is what economic shenanigans or crimes SNC-Lavalin may have done, and they certainly have done a lot over the years, can be deferred, which means the AG tells the prosecutor to suspend their prosecution, allowing the defendant or corporation to do things in order to prevent criminal charges. So, remedial agreements, paying fines, changing how they do business, this is all dependent on what caused the crime. Aside from not getting a criminal record, this is done to prevent innocent people in the corporation like shareholders or workers from being damaged as a result of some bad apples in the company doing illegal things. So, SNC-Lavalin, a big company that breaks the law and has a lot of lawyers, sought this remediation deal thingy, but the Public Prosecution Service rejected the request, so they challenged that decision, and that goes to the Minister of Justice, our then AG, Jody Wilson-Raybould. She said, no, we're not going to give you one. You've done some bad things, and that's that. And that's when the PM's office, or the PMO, started a consistent and sustained effort pressuring Jody into changing her mind. She was adamant she would not change it no matter how many times they kept calling, emailing, and texting her. She reminded the people contacting her that continuously pressuring her to do so would be political interference in the judicial system. Jody wanted to protect the Prime Minister from this, but he A, wouldn't listen, or B, was never told through his people of her objections, apparently for months. A lot of politics is wanting to do something and then watching it blow up in your face and how you look after the fact. Public image is very important, sometimes more so than what you want to do and what you actually do. People elect other people because they like the idea of that person or their ideals that person holds, as opposed to what they can do or actually do or have done.
I will get our troops home. We will bring an end to this war. You can take that to the bank.
On February 18th, Gerald Butts, Trudeau's principal secretary, his right-hand man, resigns from the PMO, even though he says he did nothing wrong, and citing that no one from the PMO pressured Miss Wilson-Raybould. If so, why would he quit? But because of optics, he quits. Okay. The same day that Michael Cohen testified before Congress on television in the States on Wednesday, February the 27th in the morning, so did Jody Wilson-Raybould do so to the House of Commons Justice Committee in the afternoon. She told us 11 officials in the PMO and other offices inappropriately pressured her to override a decision to prosecute SNC-Lavalin on bribery charges related to contracts in Libya. The Quebec-based global engineering and construction firm faces a 10-year ban on federal contracts if it's convicted. However, before then in January, Jody Wilson-Raybould was fired from her position as AG and in a cabinet shuffle appointed to Minister of Veterans Affairs. Trudeau says this is because some other guy left his position and they had to reshuffle the whole cabinet, but that's not really that important. He can throw people around for whatever reason. Regardless, a month later she resigned from her Veterans Affairs position. On March 4th, Liberal MP Dr. Jane Philpott, president of the Treasury Board, resigns from her cabinet position, citing, unfortunately, the evidence of efforts by politicians and/or officials to pressure the former Attorney General to intervene in the criminal case involving SNC-Lavalin, and the evidence as to the content of those efforts have raised serious concerns for me. Those concerns have been augmented by the views expressed by my constituents and other Canadians. On March 18th, Michael Wernick, clerk of the Privy Council, resigns over this whole affair. Wernick also testified before the House in a dazzling display of lighting himself on fire. Self-immolation is pretty amazing, and he did a brilliant job. The opposition party leader, Andrew Scheer, asked him to resign, and he did, citing he didn't have the confidence of the opposition to properly do his job. But remember, like he and everyone else, did nothing wrong.
There was questions that were definitely, that came to mind after his testimony, given the nature of his testimony, given the self-serving nature of it and the partisan nature of it.
Now we have an Attorney General who has resigned, a Treasury Board President who has resigned, a top advisor to the Prime Minister who has resigned, and now the head of the public service itself has stepped down.
On March 20th, Liberal MP Celina Caesar-Chavannes resigns from caucus and sits in as an independent, causing Trudeau of yelling at her angrily when she informed him that she would not be seeking re-election this fall. I believe real leadership is about listening, learning, and compassion. Central to my leadership is fostering an environment where my ministers, caucus, and staff feel comfortable coming to me when they have concerns. I did come to you recently, twice. Remember your reactions? This is odd since she's just not going to run for re-election. What's the problem? Is this some linchpin to Justin's black female demographic or something? She did her 4 years and she doesn't want any more.
This all started back on February 12th. On that day, Celina Caesar-Chavannes had told the Prime Minister that she intended not to seek re-election again in October when the election happens. She said she was met with anger and hostility from the Prime Minister. He said he wanted her to hold off on announcing that she wasn't running again because Jody Wilson-Raybould had just announced that she was resigning from cabinet, and the Prime Minister didn't like the optics of two women of color quitting at the same time. She says he yelled at her, saying she didn't appreciate him, and he had done so much for her. The Prime Minister's office says that there was absolutely no hostility from Trudeau in this incident. They said he has deep respect for Celina Caesar-Chavannes and that he's trying to foster an environment in caucus where people feel like they can come forward. But she says the cold shoulder continued even after that conversation on February 12th. We learned about these allegations on Twitter from Caesar-Chavannes earlier this week. On Thursday, Justin Trudeau talked about the SNC-Lavalin affair, gave his side of the story, and said the whole thing has given him pause to think about how he and his office deal with these sorts of issues. Caesar-Chavannes, though, responded on Twitter and said she'd tried to come forward with issues before twice and had been treated poorly. She wouldn't comment for this story.
So that's 5 resignations, 1 from the PMO, 1 from the Privy Council, which is supposed to be bipartisan, 2 from the Liberal Cabinet, and 1 from the Liberal Caucus. On March 29th, Jody Wilson-Raybould released a recorded conversation between herself and Michael Wernick that took place in December, where she's warning him about the perception of political interference. It affirms her 4-hour testimony that the PMO was pressuring her and that either Gerald Butts and Michael Wernick lied in his testimony or never bothered to inform the PM of what was going on in these conversations that went on for months. This is in direct opposition to the testimony of Gerald Butts, Wernick, and Trudeau's comments, who all said she never raised any concerns. Wernick was heard saying Trudeau was in a mood and that he's in a pretty firm frame of mind about this, and that he doesn't have the power to do what he wants. All the tools are in your hands.
I'm waiting for the other shoe to drop, so I'm not under any illusion how the Prime Minister has and gets things that he wants, and I'm just stuck doing the best job that I can.
Okay. All right.
Okay.
Talk again.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
So either Trudeau is lying, or Butts and Wernick are horrible aides by not informing him of what actually happened, and or are lying to protect Trudeau. Oh, and it's totally legal in Canada to record conversations provided one party consents. However, the Liberal caucus wouldn't have any of that. Last night, Justin Trudeau kicked Jody Wilson-Raybould and Dr. Jane Philpott from caucus, forcing them to sit as independents. Instead of explaining the situation or dealing with the main points, taking responsibility for the actions of the PM's office, or answering questions on who lied about what, he instead turned it around into some sort of campaign slogan attacking the opposition and saying a bunch of other such things unrelated to the topic, like the environment and how Liberals are doing things differently.
This fall, Canadians are facing a clear choice. Our opponents want to take us backwards. For proof, look no further than their lack of a climate change plan. It's been 338 days since Andrew Scheer said he'd soon release his plan to protect the environment. We're still waiting. The Conservatives think that photo ops at gas stations are all they need. They've seen that the first thing they'll do, if elected, is to make pollution free again. But what Canadians really want, like their parents and grandparents before them, is progress.
No, Justin, we don't want a corrupt group of backstabbing, lying politicians who remove actual honorable members from caucus, who tell us the sky is falling and think that a carbon tax is somehow going to help that. In reality, both Jody Wilson-Raybould and Jane Philpott did nothing wrong. They did their jobs and raised concerns when it looked like the PMO was conducting political interference. Jody stood up for her office, tried to protect the party and the PM in his office, and presented truthful testimony and evidence, while the PM or the PMO lied and played politics, trying to turn this into a campaign rally, as this is an election year. First, Trudeau said this was all about jobs, and then we find out no jobs would have been lost had SNC-Lavalin not gotten the DPA. Those jobs would have gone to other firms in the province or country, nor would existing 9,000 jobs from the company have been lost based on their current contracts. So why did Trudeau want this DPA so badly? Second, we're told there wasn't any pressure applied to the AG, when it's clear from one conversation, in fact, there was. Thirdly, all 5 Liberal members resigned from their positions, 2 from the PMO, who say they did nothing wrong, so why did they quit, and 3 from Cabinet and caucus. 1, because she simply wanted to finish her term and wasn't up for campaigning to get re-elected for doing another 4 years. She had a row with the PM about how much he did for her, and we're not sure why he was so angry at all this. She decided to say she didn't like how Justin responded to her, and she left the party. And the 2 others that had beliefs and ideals they were upholding, in Jody's case the rule of law, and the other it was how she was so loyal to the Liberal Party. Yeah, that's right, both ladies were loyal to the PM and the Liberal Party policies. They were simply doing their jobs. But the rest of the Liberal Party didn't see that. And with no opportunity to defend themselves or tell their sides of the story in the House, since the Liberals blocked 2 additional requests for further interviews with the House in this past month, it looks like the party is still in damage control and trying desperately to get rid of this story. All Trudeau had to do was take responsibility and apologize on behalf of a simple misunderstanding between government offices. Whether it's his fault or it's his office's fault or the AG's, to Canadians it would have made no difference. It was under his purview. But now we know it's him and his office. Canadians are pretty forgiving, especially when the other party actually apologizes. Trudeau never apologized, which is odd because he seems really good at apologizing for historical injustices, but not so much by problems caused by his own staff.